Good afternoon or good morning. This is Mark Duncan. I am once again with you with uh, another installment of Huddle Up with the Fun Coach, and I'm pleased to be here. Hope you are having a good day and a good week, a good October. I am going to be talking about something today that I think needs to be discussed. Sometimes it's a topic that is often shared behind the scenes and not something that we hear about sort of out in public. And so I'm going to take an opportunity today to talk about something that I think is fairly serious. Um, if you saw the post related to this live today, you will know that one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is the relationship between the chief executive officer or executive director and the chief development officer or director of development. I'm going to use CEO and CDO today as a generic way to, sort of reflect what we're talking about here. Um, so let's start. Here's where I'm going with this. Sometimes in our roles as development officers, we can bump up against some challenges when we are working with our CEO. And it's usually around fundraising. And so back when you were hired to do the job, obviously questions were asked, you had a conversation. I'm sure you talked about the things that you wanted to do as the chief development officer, but then it came time to actually start working with your chief executive officer. And you start to learn things. And usually there are a couple of things that sort of creep up. One is the chief executive officer doesn't value fundraising, perhaps the way that you think they should. And they may think that they're just happy to have somebody responsible for fundraising. They see themselves as a charity, and they just say, "Okay, we're just gonna just get out there and do some work and raise some money, and we'll be fine with that." And they may not see it or take it as seriously as you do. The other extreme is when we bump up against a CEO who is prone to micromanaging, really wants to, they hired you with the intent and communicating to you that they're going to hand off all of the fundraising responsibility to you because of your expertise and what you brought to the table. But then they start to ask you questions. They want to, they're second guessing decisions you've made. And so, what I want to do is sort of talk about how we deal with that. First, why does this happen? Right? Why does this tend to happen? I've seen it happen. I've experienced it myself. It can be a real challenge. So one of the reasons why it happens is that some, believe it or not, executive directors, chief executive officers, particularly if fundraising is a new venture, a new initiative for your nonprofit, that they don't necessarily value fundraising as an actual profession. Um, they may not say that to you, but there may be things that are said to you or the way they behave toward you, which would indicate that they're not taking you seriously or the work as seriously as they should. There's a different or no culture of philanthropy in that organization. So what does that mean? That means that you're walking into a situation, you have expectations of the work that you want to do and how you want the organization to look externally, how you want the people in the organization to feel, and behave internally about the mission, and it's just not there, and there's work that needs to be done to either improve the culture of philanthropy or actually create one. And then third, and probably the most important, is that the expectations aren't clear. So, what do I mean by that? That means that you and this CEO at the very beginning did not sit down to clarify how you will work together. What are the expectations that the CEO has of you? And quite frankly, the expectations that you have of the CEO to support your work and to support your mission. And I'm not just talking about that relationship between an employee and an employer, or a boss and somebody who reports to a boss. This is about the work of fundraising. And so, a CEO will need to really, I believe, allow and rely on their CDO, Chief Development Officer, to be able to do the work that you hired them to do. And that means sometimes being able to take a seat in the back, if you will, and allow your chief development officer to take the lead when it comes to fundraising. You've made it clear, at least you should have, what you are expecting, how much you're expecting them to raise for that year. And that really should be the only expectation that you have if you trust your chief development officer to create a strategy that will get you there. And so once that strategy is created, then you've got to sit back and let them do the work. And when they need you, how they need you to play a role in that is something that you need to be, prepared to do. So, what happens? Either you're in a situation like this, and you're either making the case for the work that you're doing, or you just give in, right? So again, if we have a CEO that is second guessing you or micromanaging you, asking you questions, and sometimes it's you're trying to make the case for why you've made the decisions you've made, or you just acquiesce. Um, and that can be a real challenge. I would not recommend doing that in the moment. This is why it is important that expectations between the chief development officer and the chief executive officer are absolutely clear from the beginning. If you are somebody who's watching this either live now on the replay, and you are experiencing something like this, and you're already sort of, waist deep into the role, there is an opportunity for you to course correct. And that is not in the thick of a conversation about a fundraising activity, but at a separate time apart, you sit down, you meet with your CEO, and you talk with them about the plan, the expectations that you have of them, and the expectations that they have of you, and how you can work better together. So, couple of things that I would recommend that you do if you find yourself in a situation like this is that you want to, well, let me define what I believe a good CEO CDO relationship looks like. CEO has to trust the CDO's expertise and judgment 100%, 100%. There has to be clear expectations of goals and metrics. So, what are the metrics that you're going to measure? I talked about that in one of these sessions before. You can certainly go back and look at the metrics that I recommend that you set to follow, and you need a baseline to set so that you know how you're going to track those. And the CDO has to be allowed to be the captain of the fundraising ship. And the CEO has to allow that. That includes being willing to have prospects assigned to you as a CEO to be the lead on those relationships. You are able to receive coaching and support from the CDO as it relates to uh, prepping for a visit. You make visits with the CDO, or if you're going on your own, but you also, number three, have to be willing to actually make visits with the chief development officer. Sometimes when we as CEOs, or when CEOs hire someone to do fundraising, they completely remove themselves from the process and say, okay, you go and do this work and let me know how it's going. The CEO is an integral part of the fundraising process. Major donors, when it comes to relationship fundraising, at some point want to interact with the leader. Now, that may not be the entire time, but that is certainly something that needs to happen at least once or twice throughout the relationship fundraising process. And so, as a chief executive officer, fundraising should be a priority. So, how do you manage this? The CEO and the board, they need a clear understanding of how fundraising works. They need to understand the process and who plays what role. So, of course, I just mentioned the board. The board plays a significant role in fundraising. The CEO plays a significant role in fundraising. Staff play a significant role in fundraising. This is a team sport. And the chief development officer leads the team. Okay. It's almost like the chief development officer is the head coach and the CEO is the general manager, to throw a sporting analogy out there. So if a general manager hires a great coach, they're going to sit back and let the coach do his or her thing. That's the same thing that has to happen here. The second is, you should find CEOs that are modeling a good CEO CDO relationship. Now, I know this is a difficult thing as a CDO, a chief development officer, director of development, finding the model executive director or CEO who is doing all the right things from a fundraising perspective, and then saying to your boss, you need to go hang out with this person, or you need to talk with this person. It's a real challenge to navigate, but it can be done. There's nothing wrong with you creating an opportunity for two organizations to meet, whether it's the chief development officer and the CEO meeting with each counterpart of the other organization, and having a conversation about fundraising, and with hopes that the CEO will understand and see how it's working. It'll be difficult for you to tell them that, but if they can see their own counterpart doing this work the way it should be done, then the likelihood of them seeing this for how it should be done is greater. It's not going to be a quick fix. It really isn't. But if the opportunity presents itself for you to have your CEO, uh, work with someone who is a CEO who does this well, that would be ideal. And then third, the chief development officer, you as the fundraiser, one of the things that you can do to prevent a lot of these challenges is to be proactive and to manage expectations. You've heard the term under promise and over deliver. If you can approach your job in that way, and when I say under promise and over deliver, I'm not just talking about dollars, I'm also talking about deliverables as it relates to tasks or things that you said you would do. So set a deadline that you can beat. Set a goal you can blow past, right? Um, and what that's going to do is that is going to instill trust in you as the leader of fundraising. Okay. So being proactive, and you're going to manage expectations. You're going to make sure that your CEO understands that this is what you are expecting from this activity, or this is the end result that you're expecting, and set that bar at a point that you know that you're going to meet and possibly exceed. Okay. So I'd love to have a sort of a roundtable conversation about this. Obviously, that's uh, not possible in this format. But this is an issue that I think is a pervasive issue that isn't often discussed. Um, and so I'm bringing it here. I'd be happy to hear uh, your comments. And obviously, this is not something you can talk openly about. So feel free to send me a direct message, and I'm happy to chat with you a little bit about it if you have any questions, or you want to run something past me, or want to just talk about it a little further. I'm certainly open to that. But I do recognize that this can be a challenge, but there is a way to fix it and to create that perfect team, that perfect fundraising team that will allow you to do all the good work that you do to raise the money you need to raise for your organization. Because as I always say, fundraising is never, ever about the dollars. It's always about what the dollars do for the people that you serve.